There are only two kinds of people in this world: those who consume illegal drugs and those who know someone who does. Now, I'm not here to critique or judge people who consume drugs. I have nothing against the drugs themselves. My aim in giving this talk, however, is to pull down the curtain so that you can see what is perhaps not obvious, so that you all know what is actually going on before illegal drugs get into the US. I care deeply about this issue because I was born and raised in the north of Mexico. My hometown is some 200 miles south of Texas, and it used to be a place in which, as a kid, I would bike and skate around with my friends, and people exercised in the streets safely. But now, everyone is living in constant fear. Children are not allowed to play outside, and literally everyone I know could stand before you today and share a horrific story of how the drug trade violence has damaged their lives. I have seen this other side, and I have kept quiet for way too long. I have lacked the courage to speak, and I have feared being the outlier. But I'm breaking my silence today because people need to hear this, especially here in the US. You know, the US is the largest market for illegal drugs. With only 5% of the world's population, it consumes over 30% of the global demand. And what's really interesting is that the vast majority of the millions and millions of users are using the drugs for recreational purposes. But only by buying, they are creating a demand. And wherever there is demand, there will be supply. And this supply is costing human lives. Let me illustrate this for you. Let's say you are a user, and you feel like getting high tonight or this weekend. So you would contact your trusted dealer and engage in a business transaction with him or her. All you see is a victimless crime. So you get high, and no big deal. But what you don't see is that for any dealer to be able to sell to you, they need to be working with one of the cartels. And before cartels supply to their dealers, they either produced the drugs in Mexico or imported them from Asia or South America and crossed them to the US by land, air, or sea. And at every step of this chain, there's bloodshed. Why is this the case? Well, because this is the most lucrative of all criminal activities. As a result, it attracts the worst criminals to it. And criminals compete by force. So this is effectively a business in which the most violent player wins. And what are they fighting over? Well, territories, highways, ports, border crossings, political influence, and so on. Because the real money to this business is not in producing drugs, but in getting them from the source to the end consumer here in the US. And to do that successfully, cartels need to control their traffic routes every step of the way. And to prevent smaller criminal groups from growing and eventually competing with them, they also set out to control smaller criminal activities like human trafficking, kidnapping, piracy, extortion, and even prostitution. To protect their huge profits, they are killing not only the people involved in their business, but also journalists, law enforcers, and innocents who refuse to cooperate. They even sometimes engage in mass killings of civilians just to instigate fear in a town. In the span of this hour of talks, 3 people are getting killed just in Mexico. This is 60 lives every single day. Many of them are innocent men, women, and children. The official death toll since 2007 stands at 160,000. This number is larger than that of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars combined. This is the bloodiest conflict in North America since the American Civil War. One morning back in the spring of 2010, I found out that 4 very close members of my family had been kidnapped by one of the cartels. Long hours of fear and suffering turned into days. Days turned into weeks. We didn't know what was going on, and we still don't, because we never saw them again. The narcos disappeared them, breaking my family apart. Now, By show of hands, who here believes in making the world a better place through our daily actions? I believe most people do, actually. In the US, every day is more common to hear about people becoming vegetarian to save animals. People are buying cruelty-free cosmetics, fair trade coffee, conflict-free diamonds. And I deeply admire how this heightened awareness about supply chains is growing. But unfortunately, we haven't yet picked up on the worst of them. One that is killing not animals, but human lives. Because Americans are spending around $150 billion on illegal drugs every year, an amount that is slightly higher than what the US federal government spends on education, and 5 times larger than what the US federal government spends on law enforcement. So you can see why this problem is so huge. And thanks to a very convenient geographic location, Mexican cartels control over 70% of the US market. The truth is that with an incentive of this magnitude, no government action in the US or Mexico will ever be enough to mitigate the violence. Around 3 years ago, Mari, a hardworking, lower-class woman who worked with me for over 6 years, realized that one of the cartels was recruiting young boys from her neighborhood by force. Being the mother of a 14-year-old boy, Mari panicked. So she took her whole family and they ran away. For several months, they lived at a very remote and uncomfortable shelter. So as soon as they heard that their neighborhood was relatively safe again, the family returned home. On the second night from their return, a group of armed men entered their house and killed her boy in front of her and her whole family, just in retaliation. I completely understand if some of you are thinking, how come the Mexican government is not doing anything about this? It is the Mexicans' fault that they have such a corrupt government and weak institutions. And you know what? That's fair. I accept our responsibility. And we are doing something about it, but the pull is way too strong. How are we supposed to fight against those hundreds of billions of dollars in automatic guns? The cartels just buy their way around Mexico, and those who don't take their money get killed. The fact we can't walk away from is that every time we buy illegal drugs, we approve, reward, and incentivize these criminal organizations. We approve, reward, and incentivize the narcos. So I stand before you today because I desperately need your help, and because I know that each one of us here could bring about a huge change. Think about this. Recreational users spend between $200 and $2,000 on illegal drugs every month. Just to give you a glimpse of what this money buys for the cartels, with $200, they can get 1,000 new rounds of ammunition. $500, a brand new AK-47 rifle. $700 pays the monthly cost of a full-time employee on their dead squad. What if instead you or someone close to you stopped buying illegal drugs? You would single-handedly help prevent several kidnappings, extortions, or worse. So if you're not a user, I ask you to please have this conversation with your friends, with your families. And if you are one, please think twice before you buy again. Consider alcohol or legal weed instead. Just don't lie to yourself, because now you know where your money would find its way to. Eventually, if we succeed, my family, people in my hometown, and all over Latin America would start feeling safe again. Our children would go back to playing outside. Thank you.